Capricorn, Capricorn. The silent cut they make after hearing this. Have you ever noticed how a Capricorn simply disappears? There's no drama, no explosive confrontation, no long messages explaining what happened. Just a deep, definitive silence, and you're left wondering, what did I say? Capricorn is the sign of extreme patience. They endure a lot, tolerate more than they should, but there's an invisible line that, when crossed, activates an internal mechanism that few signs possess, the silent cut. Without warning, without a second chance, without turning back. And the most intriguing thing? They don't do it out of revenge or manipulation. Capricorns simply calculate the value of each relationship as if it were an investment. When they realize they are losing more than they are gaining, when they feel their loyalty is being wasted, or when they hear that specific phrase that reveals someone's true nature, that's when it happens. The cut is surgical, precise, irreversible. In this video, I'm going to reveal exactly what you can say or do to activate this Capricorn defense mechanism. What words sound like alarm bells in their minds? What behaviors make a Capricorn decide that you no longer deserve their precious time? If you have a Capricorn in your life, whether as a friend, partner, or family member, you need to understand this fundamental characteristic. Because when they make that silent cut, no amount of arguing will bring them back. Get ready to discover the secrets behind the coldest and most calculated decision of the Zodiac. Let's begin. Before we begin, please subscribe to the channel and leave a like. This type of in-depth content about the Zodiac signs depends on your support to continue reaching you. And tell me in the comments, have you ever felt this way without being able to explain it? That moment when you realize that the person is simply no longer present? To understand Capricorn's silent cutting edge, you first need to understand how this sign functions emotionally. And the key word here is investment. Capricorns don't see relationships as casual experiences. For them, each connection is an investment of time, emotional energy, and loyalty. And like any serious investment, they expect a return. But we're not talking about a selfish or materialistic return. No. Capricorns invest expecting loyalty, consistency, respect, and reciprocity. They want to know that the effort they put into the relationship isn't being wasted. Think of Capricorn as the builder of the Zodiac. They don't build sandcastles on the beach, knowing the tide will wash them away. They build solid, lasting structures, made to withstand the test of time. And that applies to relationships as well. When a Capricorn chooses you, whether as a friend, partner, or confidant, they are saying, I see potential here. I believe it's worthwhile to build something with you. But here's the crucial detail that most people don't realize. Capricorns don't communicate this openly. They simply start to act. They start to show up, to be consistent, to be present during difficult times, to offer practical support when you need it. And while they do this, a part of them is observing, analyzing, calculating. Is this person building with me? Or am I the only one laying brick upon brick? It's as if Capricorns have an internal scale. On one side, what they give. On the other, what they receive. And they don't expect perfect equality all the time. Capricorns understand that relationships have phases. Sometimes you give more, sometimes you receive more. But if the balance remains unbalanced for too long, if they realize they are always on the giving side and never on the receiving side, something inside them begins to change. Here is the origin of this trait: protection. Capricorns learned early in life that not everyone values consistency. Not everyone recognizes loyalty. Not everyone reciprocates effort. Often, through painful experiences, they understood that being reliable can be interpreted as being available to be used. And this creates a deep internal conflict. On one hand, Capricorn wants to believe in people. They want to build authentic and lasting connections. On the other hand, an inner voice whispers, protect yourself. Don't be naive. Don't let them use you. So, what does Capricorn do? They become silent observers. They give, yes. They invest, yes. But while they do so, they are collecting data, paying attention to patterns, to inconsistencies, to the small betrayals that other signs might quickly forgive. And here's what makes this trait so complex. For a long time, it seems like a virtue. Capricorns are seen as people-ripe, responsible, loyal, and they are, in fact, all those things. But beneath this maturity lies a constant tension, an emotional vigilance that never truly rests. Because Capricorn is always, even unconsciously, evaluating. Is it worth continuing to invest here? And when the answer becomes no, the cut is practically decided. Now let's talk about something most people can't see. The difference between the Capricorn the world sees and the Capricorn that exists inside. Externally, Capricorns project control. They seem to have everything under control. They appear emotionally stable, rational, and difficult to shake. When you look at a Capricorn, especially in crisis situations, you see someone who maintains composure. They don't fall apart in public. They don't make emotional scenes. They don't easily share their inner conflicts. And this creates a perception. Capricorn is cold. Capricorn doesn't feel as much as the other signs. But the truth? The truth is exactly the opposite. Capricorns feel deeply, intensely, but they learned early on that showing vulnerability can be dangerous, that expressing emotional needs can be interpreted as weakness, that asking for help can disappoint the people who depend on them. So what do? They create an emotional fortress, a persona of competence and self-sufficiency. And behind that fortress, they process everything on their own. Imagine an iceberg. The part visible above the water is small, solid, impressive. But 90% of the iceberg is submerged, invisible, carrying an immense weight that no one sees. Capricorn is that iceberg. What you see, calmness, rationality, control. What lies hidden? Doubts, accumulated resentments, silent disappointments, an emotional exhaustion that grows each time they need to be strong on their own. And here's what makes it even more complicated. Capricorns don't just hide their vulnerability from others. Often, they hide it from themselves as well. They convince themselves that they're okay, that they can handle anything, that they don't need as much emotional support as other people. And for a while it works. But the constant effort of maintaining that image, of carrying everything alone, of always being the reliable pillar for others, that effort takes its toll. Do you know what happens when you hold too much weight for too long? Eventually, something breaks, or you drop the weight. And when Capricorn drops it, it's not gradually. It's definitively. The silent cut isn't coldness. It's exhaustion. This is the moment when Capricorn realizes, I'm trying so hard to maintain this connection, and the other person doesn't even notice. Or worse, they notice and don't care. If you're a Capricorn, you know exactly what I'm talking about. How many times have you asked yourself, why am I always the one who needs to be strong? Why am I always the one who needs to have the answers? Why does nobody ask how I really am? And how many times have you swallowed those questions and still remain strong? And if you're not a Capricorn, but you have one in your life, understand this. When they're calm, it doesn't always mean everything is okay. Often, it means they've decided not to share the burden with you. And if you never ask, if you never offer support, if you always assume Capricorn is okay because they seem to be, you might be missing the opportunity to see who they really are. Even worse, you might be feeding that internal balance I mentioned earlier, the one that measures investment versus return. And when that balance tips too far to one side for too long, the cutoff is imminent. Now let's explore the behavioral patterns that Capricorns repeat, often unconsciously, and which eventually lead to silent breakups. Capricorns are loyal to the end. When they commit to someone, they show up, through good times and bad. They don't abandon you when things get tough. But here's the pattern. They often choose people who don't reciprocate that loyalty. Perhaps because, subconsciously, Capricorns feel more comfortable being the pillar than being supported. Perhaps because they believe they can fix or stabilize unstable people. Or perhaps because they simply don't know how to ask for reciprocity. The result? Relationships where Capricorn gives 80%, 90%, and receives 20% back. And for a while, they accept it. I'm stronger. I can handle it. Until one day, they can't take it anymore. Capricorns hate emotional confrontation. They see it as a loss of control, as unnecessary drama. So, when something bothers them, they rarely speak up right away. They hold back. They visualize. They rationalize. It's not that serious. It's not worth making a big deal out of it. But here's the danger. Every little thing Capricorn swallows goes into a mental file. A file that is never erased. And when that file gets too full, when one more little thing happens, it's not just that one thing that matters. It's everything. The whole history. All the times they let it slip by. And that's where the cut happens. Not as a response to a single event, but as a response to the accumulated weight of many. Capricorns want to believe in people. They give them chances. Sometimes too many chances. When someone disappoints them, Capricorns don't cut them off immediately. They observe. They wait. Maybe it was a bad moment. Maybe they'll change. Maybe I'm being too harsh. So they give it another chance. And another. And another. But each cycle of hope followed by disappointment wears something down inside them. And eventually, hope turns into resignation. And resignation turns into disconnection. If you're a Capricorn, you may have already felt this. The feeling of always returning to the same place. Always being the most committed. Always being the one who endures the most. Always being the one who stays when others leave. And there's a part of you that takes pride in that. I am reliable. I am consistent. But there's another, smaller, quieter part that whispers. And when is someone going to be that for me? I'm not going to give you magic answers right now. I'm not going to say, do this, and everything will change. Because the truth is, recognizing these patterns is only the first step. What matters now is that you see these patterns exist. They are not your faults. They are protective strategies that you have developed. But they come at a cost. And the more you repeat these cycles, the closer you get to that moment when the internal balance tips too far. And cutting back becomes inevitable. Let's talk now about what happens when these patterns extend over time. Because Capricorn's silent cutting doesn't happen out of nowhere. It's the result of a long process, often invisible even to themselves. Imagine that every time a Capricorn swallows a disappointment, a small light inside them goes out. Not a big, obvious light. Just a small flame of hope, of openness, of willingness to trust. At first, they don't even notice. There's still enough light. There's still energy to keep investing. But over time, after years of being the breadwinner, of putting aside their own needs, of giving more than they receive, they look inward and realize, it's dark in here. When did it get so dark? This emotional strain begins to affect fundamental choices. Capricorns may begin to avoid emotional depth. If I don't open up, I can't be disappointed. They may choose superficial relationships where they don't have to invest as much. Or worse, they may isolate themselves completely, convinced that it's safer to be alone than to risk it again. In career decisions, personal life, even in how they structure their time, the pattern repeats itself. I can only count on myself. So I'm going to build a life where I don't need anyone. And that sounds like independence, like strength. But inside, it feels like loneliness. Capricorns value stability above almost everything else. They build their lives seeking emotional, financial, and relational security. But here's the paradox. When they realize that the emotional security they seek in relationships doesn't exist, they return to the only security they completely control, themselves. And this creates an ever higher fortress, ever more difficult to penetrate, ever more lonely. In the long run, what Capricorn feels isn't anger. It's not active resentment. It's exhaustion. A profound weariness from always having to be the adult in the room, from always having to hold everything together, from never being able to break down because someone needs to be strong. And when that weariness reaches a critical point, when yet another comment, another mistake, another moment of lack of reciprocity occurs, the cut isn't an explosion. It's a silent sigh. I can't take it anymore. And the most painful consequence of all? Capricorns may begin to believe that the problem is them, that they expect too much, that they are too demanding, that perhaps, just perhaps, they don't deserve the consistency and loyalty they give to others. And that's devastating, because it's not true. Capricorns don't expect too much. They only expect what they themselves offer: presence, consistency, reciprocity. But when the world repeatedly fails to offer that in return, what is left but to cut it off? Here's what nobody tells you about Capricorn. The silent cut isn't revenge. It's not punishment. It's not manipulation. It's about survival. This is the moment when Capricorn decides that preserving their peace is worth more than maintaining a connection that wears them down. It's when they finally choose themselves, even if it means disappointing someone, even if it means being seen as cold or insensitive. And when Capricorn makes that cut, they don't just distance themselves from you. They distance themselves from the version of themselves that still believed that relationship could work. It's a silent grief, not only for the person they lost, but for the hope they carried. The central conflict for Capricorns is this: they want to build deep and lasting connections, but they've learned that most people aren't willing to build with them. They want to trust, but they've been taught that trusting is too risky. They want to be seen, vulnerable, real, but they've learned that maintaining their fortress is safer. And so they live in this in-between space, investing but protected, present but distant, loyal but always with a planned exit. What's heartbreaking about this pattern is that Capricorn has an immense capacity for loyal love, true partnership, and building something meaningful with another person. But this ability is wasted when directed towards people who don't value it. And Capricorn knows this deeply. And perhaps the silent cut isn't about giving up on others. Perhaps it's about finally stopping giving up on themselves. If you're a Capricorn and you're listening to this right now, you're not cold. You're not too demanding. You're not wrong in wanting reciprocity. You just carried too much weight for too long, alone for too long. If choosing your peace means cutting ties, then perhaps it's not the ties that need to be cut. Perhaps it's the pattern of always putting others before yourself. I'm not going to tell you that recognizing this pattern will instantly change everything. I'm not going to promise you'll never feel this way again. But what I can tell you is this: awareness is the first step towards choice. When you realize you've been repeating a cycle of uneven investment, of swallowing disappointments, of prioritizing the peace of others over your own, you can start asking yourself different questions. Is this person building with me, or am I building alone? Am I avoiding confrontation out of maturity, or out of fear of losing someone who has already lost me emotionally? Am I being loyal, or am I being opportunistic? And if you realize you're in a cycle that needs to be broken, don't judge yourself for how long it took you to see it. Capricorn is the sign of loyalty. It's natural that you gave more chances than you should have. But now you know, and now you can choose differently. Silent cutting will always be a tool available to you. But it doesn't have to be the only one. You can learn to communicate boundaries before reaching the breaking point. You can learn to choose people who truly invest back. You can learn that asking for reciprocity isn't weakness, it's self-respect. No, this won't be easy, and it won't happen overnight. But you, Capricorn, know how to build lasting things. You know how to be patient. You know how to do the hard work. So perhaps it's time to apply that same dedication not to fixing others, but to building a healthier relationship with yourself. And if that means making fewer silent cuts because you started making better choices from the beginning, it's worth every effort. Now I want to know from you. At what point did you notice this pattern in your life? Was it after a specific disappointment? Was it a slow build-up? Or are you still in the middle of this cycle, unsure when the cut will happen? Leave your comments below. This community is a safe space to share, and often, seeing that others are going through the same thing is what makes us feel less alone. And if you want to understand more about how Capricorn can break this cycle and build real connections without losing their essence, keep an eye out because the next video will explore exactly that. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and join me on this journey of profound self-discovery. Hugs, and see you in the next video.